My father's hospital is outdated. I'll take over in the future. My brother is trying to take over our father's hospital despite lacking the skills. His reckless actions are a huge inconvenience to everyone. As I am neither a doctor nor a nurse, I couldn't stop his rampage. After our father passed away, the hospital was inherited by my brother. He doesn't know the severe punishment that is about to fall on him. I am Amy, a 27-year-old writer. I live alone in a single apartment in the city. Our family owns Hanson Maternity Hospital, which is quite reputable, and has been managed by my great-grandfather's generation. Almost all of our relatives are doctors or nurses. Both my parents are doctors who met when my grandfather was the director. My mother quit her job when my brother was born. And my father succeeded my grandfather as director and also serves as the vice president of the American Obstetrics and Gynecology Association. Despite being born into a family of medical professionals, I never pursued that path. I have always struggled with math and biology. At reunions, I'm still teased about fainting during a frog dissection. On the other hand, my strengths were in language arts. I won several awards for essays and book reports, which led me to want a career in writing. This aspiration remained unchanged even when I seriously considered my future. And I decided to pursue a career as a writer. I am truly grateful to my parents, especially my father, who supported me when I was struggling with going against their expectations. I don't want to see a baby delivered by you who became a doctor reluctantly. But I would like to read an article written by you who became a writer by choice. Do your best. Initially, my income was unstable, and I almost gave up several times. But I persevered thanks to my father's words. Now, I have steady work and publish articles on travel and gourmet food in web and print magazines. Just today, I finished an article about sweets that will be popular this spring. As the winter cold eases, people in the city slow their pace to enjoy the sweets, making my coverage enjoyable. While reminiscing about the taste of the sampled sable, I received a call from my mother. We talk weekly. Are you doing well? Are you eating properly? She always asks with concern, then casually mentioned. Actually, Nick has come back and started working at our hospital. Nick? My brother, Nick, is an obstetrician like our father, but had been working at a university hospital instead of Hanson Maternity Hospital to avoid special treatment as the director's son. A decision enforced by our father despite Nick's dissatisfaction. He has worked there for 4 years, so it must have been a good experience. Lately, your father has not been feeling well, and he seems to be considering his successor. Dad is already 73 years old. Maybe it's time for you two to relax? When I suggested that, my mother replied, maybe so. How about we go to Hawaii on your treat? She joked before hanging up. I wonder if everything is okay. I muttered to myself. Nick has always been selfish, especially in his relationship with our father. The thought of him living at home and working at our father's hospital. I hoped nothing would happen, but unfortunately, my fears were soon realized. Soon after hearing about it, Nick moved back home and quickly caused the issues I feared. Hanson Maternity Hospital has a large scale with 100 beds, and he proposed adding a new wing with 30 beds. Dad might not understand, but just being new makes it popular. Let's make the private rooms and meals as luxurious as a high-end hotel. Of course, our father opposed it. There's no need for more beds. Instead, focus on studying new medicines and medical devices and put more effort into caring for patients and pregnant women. But Nick didn't listen to our father at all and proceeded with the construction of the new wing. Our relatives were dumbfounded by his audacity, but I somewhat understood his intentions. He was probably planning for a generational change. Once he becomes the director, he plans to make the new wing the main facility, demolish the old one, and manage the hospital by catering only to high-end patients. Nick has always described our father's hospital as an old-fashioned, outdated hospital. Despite its history, it has undergone several renovations and repairs, and the administrative and cleaning staff always keep it immaculately clean. Feeling gloomy about Nick's takeover plans, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. In addition, there's another concern. Around the same time my brother started working at the hospital, Lucy started working there too as a medical administrator. She's my brother's wife, and now they live together at my parents' home. She hasn't caused any problems at work or home. However, my mother once confided in me. Actually, I think she's quite cunning. What do you mean? I asked, but my mother didn't go into details. We just have to get along. At my age, I'd rather not deal with mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues. She laughed it off, but her words left a seed of unease in me. How are my brother and his wife getting along with my parents? It concerned me, but I was so busy with work deadlines that I couldn't go to check on them. One day, while I was writing an article for a magazine, I received a call from my mother. I thought it was just our usual update, but she started the conversation visibly shaken. "Your father has collapsed." Immediately, I grabbed only my jacket, rushed out of my apartment, and headed to the hospital where my father was taken. Fortunately, by the time I arrived, his condition had stabilized, and he was sleeping with a tired expression. As I slumped to the floor, drained, my mother looked at me with a teary smile. "I'm sorry. He'll need to be hospitalized for a while, but for now, he's not in any danger." "That's a relief, really, I'm so glad." But then, my mother's voice grew somber. "However, the doctor said that if he collapses again, it could be dangerous." "That's terrible." I had heard that he hadn't been feeling well recently, but I never imagined it would come to this. As I lost my words, my mother smiled again. "Let's be strong. Your father is doing his best, so we need to support him." Yes, you're right. Just as my mother said, we needed to be strong. I repeated that to myself several times. But what about the hospital? It'll be fine. Everyone at our hospital is excellent. Her words were true. During my father's absence, the doctors and staff united to protect the hospital. Not only that, but doctors who had connections with my father also came to help. When I went around thanking them, despite their busy schedules, they responded with smiles. "Considering what the director has done for us, this is the least we can do. I'm really grateful to your father. It's good to be able to give back." It was as if my father's network had created a large supportive circle around Hanson Maternity Hospital. However, there were people who couldn't fit into this circle, my brother and his wife. Nick and Lucy's lack of ability became evident. Amid the hectic days, they couldn't keep up with the pace of work of the other doctors and staff, becoming completely ineffective. If only they had stuck to what they could do. But of course, they wanted to be at the center of everything, which only led to unwanted interference and criticism from other doctors, midwives, and staff. Now, no one bothers with them. When I heard about it from relatives, I thought, just as I expected. Even as a layperson in medicine, the difference between my brother and my father is clear. It's not just a difference in experience, but in their aspirations. Nick has always felt inferior to our father, who is a respected obstetrician. It's more accurate to say he resented being compared to him. But I've never seen my brother make an effort to study or seek guidance to catch up with our father. Nick has a strong need for recognition but doesn't put in the effort, unlike our father, who dedicates himself to his patients and sets an example for everyone. Lucy also became overwhelmed with the influx of tasks, hysterically complaining. I wasn't told it would be this busy. I felt sorry for the hospital staff, but their problems didn't stay confined to the workplace. The stress of not getting their way at work turned towards my mother at home. I tried to be as supportive as I could, finding time to return home and help my mother. She has lost some weight and tries to act cheerful, but it's somewhat painful to see. When we were cooking dinner together and talking about my father's condition during a visit, the front door opened, and my brother and his wife returned. They came back much earlier than other doctors and staff, but looked gaunt. My mother greeted them with a smile. "Welcome home. You must be tired. Dinner isn't ready yet, is it?" To that, my brother gave her a cold look. "Of course not. There's no time to eat." Why would he say that? I thought, feeling annoyed. Next to him, Lucy irritably flipped her hair and glanced at the food on the table. Despite the chaos at the hospital every day, I'm envious that you, mother-in-law, have the leisure to cook. Just as I was about to tell her not to take it out on my mother, my brother Nick chimed in. It's true though. Even though she's a former obstetrician herself, it's amazing she can afford to take it easy like this. Furious, I confronted them. Nick. And you too, Lucy, enough is enough. Mom is taking care of Dad. And doing all the housework, isn't she? How is that taking it easy? Huh? He's in the hospital, so he doesn't need caretaking. If she has so much free time, I'd appreciate it if she could help make our lives at the hospital easier. And you call yourself a son? You just see Dad's hospital as nothing more than a tool to make money. Hey, you're neither a doctor nor a staff member, so don't act so high and mighty. That hit a nerve. Indeed, I am not part of the hospital staff. No matter how much I care about the hospital, I am ultimately an outsider. Yet, I couldn't calm down unless I said something, so I showed my teeth to them. However, my mother gently touched my shoulder. It's okay, Amy. Your brother and his wife are tired too. But I bit my lip, frustrated, and my mother whispered in my ear softly. Dad will be discharged from the hospital soon. I want to keep things as peaceful as possible. Faced with that, I had no choice but to back down. Nick looked down on me with a disdainful gaze. After some time, when my father was discharged, we all breathed a sigh of relief from the bottom of our hearts. The hospital's doctors and staff warmly welcomed my father back. However, it seemed that Nick was annoyed by my father's return. At home, he began to treat my father as an inconvenience, and even loudly claimed that my father no longer has the demeanor of a director. Lucy was harsh with my mother too. But whenever I confronted them, both my father and mother would always stop me. Let's try to have a good time while Amy is here. If that's what my parents wished for, as much as it frustrated me, I had to let go of my grievances against Nick and his wife. I forced myself to switch gears just so my parents could smile. My father seemed lively as ever at the hospital. He even seemed to enjoy reading the articles I wrote, even though he wasn't really interested in gourmet food. At night, the three of us, mother, father, and I would reminisce. The old pop songs my father used to sing when drunk, he now hummed quietly. In those moments, my father always had a gentle smile. And unbeknownst to us, he was quietly getting his affairs in order. As the seasons changed and the leaves on the street trees began to turn yellow, my father collapsed again. Remembering what was said last time, we braced ourselves. My father regained consciousness just once before he died, looked around at us all, smiled slightly, and then slowly exhaled his last breath. It was a quiet and peaceful end, fitting for my father. "Thank you, Dad," I said, supporting my sobbing mother and expressing my deepest gratitude to my father. At my father's funeral, people from the hospital and those who knew him came one after another to offer their condolences. The grief of losing my father was still fresh, but it felt honorable to see so many gather and mourn him. Everyone felt the same, except for Nick and Lucy. They didn't greet the mourners or say thanks. Lucy even fidgeted during the funeral. They only greeted well-positioned hospital officials, trying to curry favor. But those approached by Nick and Lucy brushed off their greetings. Everyone was visibly tired of Nick's claims of "I will inherit the hospital." No one wanted such a person to run the hospital. For the first time, I regretted not pursuing a career in medicine. A few days later, a lawyer announced my father's will. Our main concern was the future of Hanson Maternity Hospital. Contrary to our concerns, the will simply stated, "The hospital is to be left entirely to my eldest son, Nick." At that moment, Nick and Lucy looked triumphantly at the relatives. They already had the gaze of someone overseeing subordinates. Whispers filled the room, not of celebration but of worry for the future. I let out a loud sigh, audible to Nick and Lucy, which they clearly did not appreciate. Nick snorted loudly and stood up, Lucy following him. "Remember this, I'm inheriting the hospital. From now on, we'll do things my way. I'm never coming back to this house." With those words, they slammed the door shut. In the ensuing silence, an uncle muttered, "That guy, he's got it all wrong." At his words, all the relatives burst into laughter. Our laughter must have been audible to Nick, but he wouldn't understand why for some time. Nick quickly proved he was not fit to be the director. His selfish and tyrannical behavior led to mass resignations. The vendors he had deals with severed their contracts. As a result, the hospital's service deteriorated and the number of patients plummeted. No one was willing to follow a leader who wielded power without capability. As for Nick and Lucy, they faced further troubles. Unknown to them, the hospital was in debt of over $1 million due to the new wing Nick had unilaterally decided to build. Nick was unaware of the debt. With my father's will stating the hospital to Nick, he also inherited this massive debt. Nick and Lucy lost their home and were left destitute, a fitting end to their actions. Neither my mother nor I, nor the relatives, intended to help them. Once, they tried to return to the family home, but we firmly drove them out, remembering their vow never to return. Despite Nick's actions, we couldn't let the hospital close. The hospital staff ousted the incompetent Nick, and one of my father's most devoted subordinates took over. Thanks to their diligent work and skilled management, the hospital gradually recovered. As for Nick, he lost his job, and his bad reputation spread quickly due to my father's national renown. He's still struggling to find re-employment. After my father's death, I moved in with my mother. With the insurance money and her savings, we're not struggling. But I want to be there for her. I continue to write as a freelance writer, living quietly with my mother. She grins as she watches me type. Mr. Thompson, who took over the hospital, seems to be interested in you, Amy. Why not go out for a meal with him sometime? I glance at my mother. It's an intriguing suggestion, but for now, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. I turn back to my computer screen. I have to finish this article. It's my first attempt at an essay. The title is just one word, father, but maybe it's a bit austere?